Hello and welcome to Sixpenny Memories. This is block 8. It's called the turtle block and it's quite a straightforward block. It's ideal for beginners and I'll just take you through this finished size, which is 12 inches. So what you'll need is a selection of fabrics. You want 2 fabrics, and I've chosen a peach colour here which measure 3.5 inches by 6.5 inches. And you also want, out of the same colourway, 2 squares that are 3.5 inch squares. Out of another colourway, and I've chosen yellow on this occasion, you also want 2 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles and another 2 3.5 inch squares. So those 2 colours are exactly the same. In addition to that, in a third colour, you need 4 3.5 inch squares. So the first thing you're going to do is, I'm going to bring it down here, is you are going to get your squares. And actually I've started sewing, so it'll just give you an idea. And I like to lay the block out. Anybody who knows me knows that I can often get things a little bit mixed up, so I just find it easier to lay them out. And as you can see, I've laid the 4 squares, which are the sort of squares that do a bit ping. You've got 1 here and 1 down here, okay? And the rows are exactly the same. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to flip these 2 squares together. And at this point, it doesn't matter which way they are. And also may as well flip these 2 together. And I'm going to sew them on the sewing machine using a 1/4 inch seam allowance for both. Throughout, I tend to use, I'll just flip this around. I tend to use a Aurifil thread because the Aurifil thread just beds into the seam. It's lint free. And everything I'm talking about we do have available on the Sixpenny Memories website. Now the great thing again with this block is you can chain piece, so I've fed those 2 in first, and what chain piecing means is that you feed 1 in after the other. And I'm using a 1/4 inch foot. You could use your regular foot but just move your needle across if you haven't got a 1/4 inch foot. And sometimes you could draw a line on if you wish, if you just want to build your confidence to make sure that you've got the right seam allowance. So all I'm going to do now is grab my scissors and cut those 2 open, get rid of the pins, and we are going to press them. So literally set the seam, just using a little prim iron, and flip one of them over. Now I'm using the wool pressing mat, which is the 12 inch wool pressing mat. And we have it available in 2 sizes, 17 inch by 12 and the 12 inches by 12. And when you're using the wool pressing mat, you don't have to have your iron on extremely hot. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop these back so they are, oops, I'll get them the right way. So they're back in position. And it's at this point here that you need to make sure that you get the orientation correct. And what we're wanting is to have 2 squares in the centre. 2 of the accent squares are going in the centre and the other 2 are going in the corners. So once I've got this laid out, because I don't want these turned around, I'm now going to flip this 6.5 by 3.5 inch rectangle on top of that. And once again, I pop a pin in there so I know it's this seam I'm sewing. And I'll do the same on that side, and I'm going to pop a pin in this side here, and I know that's the one I'm going to sew. And the reason I do that is because often if I've turned it round at the sewing machine, I could end up sewing the wrong seam, and it's unpicking isn't the best thing to have to do. So once I know this is the direction it's going in, I'm just going to make sure that they marry up there, and you can use pins if you want to. And we're going to sew again down this long edge like that. So just sew down that one. And once again, you can chain piece. And remember, chain piecing is just where you're going to put 1 in after the other. It saves thread. It also keeps all of your pieces together. It just saves a little bit of time as well, and it stops you having to stop and start. Okay, so we'll just sew down that long edge there. And once we've sewn down that long edge, then we'll bring it back to the cut mat or the pressing mat, and grab the scissors, and I'm just going to clip those open like that. And this time I'm going to press, so I'm going to set that seam, just get that down there, set the seam, and I'm going to flip the seam towards the rectangle. So that's pressing the set the seam and press the seam towards the rectangle. So just set the seam, okay, and open it up and press it towards that rectangle. Okay, once we've done that, once again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them back in position. So this one will go here and this one will go here. Once I'm happy that I've got the block back in position, I'm now going to sew this one onto here. So again, I'm turning this block, flipping it over, and I'm just going to pop a pin in there so I know the side that I'm sewing, and just marry them up. As the bits get bigger, I do tend to use pins to keep the pieces together. So I've just pinned that edge, and I'm going to sew down here, take it back to the sewing machine, let's raise that up a little bit, and we're going to sew again with a 1/4 inch seam straight the way down. Now if you were to make several of these blocks, you would start to get a second pattern appearing as you put the blocks together, so it would make a really interesting quilt project, and a very, very quick quilt project. Bring this back. Okay, we'll take that out, and once again we're going to set the seam. Now I want to press it so that the seam allowance is going towards this rectangle here. So I've pressed it, flipped it open, and I'm pressing the seam towards that rectangle. So you're going to do the same for the other side. I've already done that. Oops, let's get that round. So can you see we've now got, check that it's in position again, it's coming together lovely. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this one onto here. Now if you've pressed your seam to the rectangle on both sides, then your seam will absolutely nestle together there lovely. And you can just pop a pin in there to check. Yeah, oh, it's not quite, I haven't quite got it in position. And I'm just going to pop the pin so the seam is in the right place there. Then I'm going to get this end here and just make sure that that fits there lovely, which it will. Now you can do this square in 2 different sizes. So for the 12-inch square, you used, for the accent, you had 4 3.5-inch squares. That was my blue one. And you needed 2 other colours, and out of your 2 other colours you have 2 rectangles which are 6.5 inches by 3.5 inches and 2 squares which are 3.5-inch squares. And if you want to make this into a 9-inch block, then you can do, you just have to change the measurements. So your accent block on the 9-inch square, finished square, would be 2 3/4 inches. And for your 2 colours, oops, I've just unthreaded it. For your 2 colours, you would have 2 squares, which are 2 3/4 inches, and 2 rectangles, which are 2 3/4 by 5 inches. Now, those measurements fit lovely into a charm square or a layer cake square if you have any sort of random squares left. And remember that the 6penny Memories Sew Along was designed purely and simply to use up scraps. So yes, if you are doing the same block over and over again, and you were making multiples of that block, then what you could do is you could cut long strips. So you could cut a 3.5-inch strip and subcut it if you were using the same accent fabric. But as I say, the whole idea behind the sew along was to see what was in your stash, what was left over, and to make a selection of different blocks. So I've sewn along there. So I'm going to bring you back onto the pressing mat. Somebody asked earlier on if it's okay to put the pressing mat on top of my cutting mat, and for this particular pressing mat, yes it is. So I've set the seam there. Now before I actually open the seam up, I'm actually going to clip into these little bits here. So I'm just going to show you. I was asked by somebody how to do that, so I'm clipping into this seam here. I'm flipping it over and I'm clipping into that one there, okay? And then I'm clipping very close to that there and very close to here. And by using the Prim Love scissors, they're great because not only do they have a nice blade, very similar design to a dressmaking scissor, but they cut to the very edge and you can snip in. Once you've snipped in, okay, what you'll now be able to do is to be able to open up the seam in the centre. And sometimes it's easier to use a skewer. You could use your fingers if you've got nice long nails, which I haven't at the moment. You could use a pin, but can you see what I'm doing here is I've just opened that up, and I want the seams to radiate around. They're going round and clockwise, so the seams are going that way, and then this bottom seam, this side seam here, is going to go this way. So can you see the seams are going round? And now I can give it a press. Okay, and what that'll do is it'll stop any bulk in the centre here, because if I hadn't clipped into those seams and allowed them to go in the direction that they wanted, then you would end up often having a lump here, and when it comes to quilting, it can be really difficult to quilt through. You always find that your needle would get there and sometimes it'll rock. So there you are, very quick turtle block. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you want to watch any more of the Sixpenny Memories Sew Along videos, please do so. Just have a look at our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the channel and please like it and share it. And also, if you want any of the products, just have a look at www.six-penny.com, and thank you.